Soon after the Buddha's enlightenment, he passed a man on the road who was struck by his incredible presence and radiance and peaceful presence. So he stopped and he asked the Buddha, "My friend, what are you? Are you a celestial being or a god?" "No," said the Buddha. "Are you some kind of magician or wizard or whatever?" "No," answered the Buddha again. "Are you a man?" "No." "Well, my friend, what are you then?" And Buddha answered, "I am awake. I am awake." Let us affirm that fiat with beloved Gautama this day. I am awake. So what does it mean to be awake as far as the Buddha is talking about it? Well, he said that it means to him that he sees things the way they really are. Now, we might ask, what does that mean? Well, the historical Buddha actually gave a lot of teachings and a lot of clues with his teachings. Now, when he equates being awake with seeing things the way they are, he's really saying that there's much more to know than what we see here in our limited illusion in this dimension. Now, you know, Jesus actually said the same thing. He let us know that there's a lot more when he said to his disciples, "But the Comforter, which is the Holy Ghost, whom the Father will send in my name, he shall teach you all things, and bring all things to your remembrance whatsoever I have said unto you." So there's that great insinuation that there's a lot more. Now, Jesus said that 2,000 years ago. So look at what has come forth on this planet since that initial descent of the Holy Spirit. Yes, we went through the Dark Ages, but in this cycle, we are birthing the Aquarian Age. We are birthing a Golden Age. And you see this birthing take place everywhere, within ourselves, within others all around the world, in our culture. Now, we don't always hear about this. The great emphasis seems to be on the opposite of what's happening. You know, I was listening to the Enoch Rosary the other day, and I was reminded about what Mother said about the writings of Enoch. She said that they prophesy two things. They prophesy, one, the mercy unto the saints who receive the splendor of his light and everlasting life. The splendor of his light and everlasting life. And they prophesy the final judgment of the Watchers, the Nephilim, and their godless creation. So in this day, in the last 100 years or so, we see a great resurgence of the ancient teachings, both East and West. And of course, we have the Ascended Master teachings that came forth in the 20th century. So we have many, many awarenesses awakening people. And look at what science has done. Look at the breakthroughs in quantum theory and the understanding far beyond what our traditional religious concepts are. And they're basically proving many of the spiritual concepts. We don't have time to go into all that today, but it's amazing, and it's worth your while to definitely look into some of the amazing discoveries in quantum physics. So we can see how the flow of the Holy Spirit, that original descent, has unfolded over the last 2,000 plus years. And here we are. Now, when Gautama walked the earth as the Buddha, he gave many, many teachings, and many teachings that are very practical for everyday living. He was very practical, actually, and you'll see as we go through some of his teachings. Now, as you heard in the reading, one of his final temptations after he achieved enlightenment was, don't bother teaching these things to these people. They'll never understand. They won't get it. Just go off and forget it. And Gautama could have gone to the mountains, meditated the rest of his life, increased his own attainment, but he did not. He did not divorce himself from everyday life and society and culture. He said, some will understand, and he did not retreat. In fact, he came forth with great teachings. He taught the Four Noble Truths, and that led to the Eightfold Path. Now, the Four Noble Truths, he summed it up very, very succinctly. He said, I teach suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. That's all I teach. So that's what he says. Well, there's a little more to it, of course, as we know. The Four Noble Truths, the first one is, all existence is dukkha. And dukkha has been translated various ways: suffering, anguish, pain, or unsatisfactoriness. And the Buddha's insight was that our lives are a struggle. And we do not have the ultimate happiness in this dimension. And of course, this was informed by his experiences when he left the indulgent life of his father's castle and went out and saw those individuals, the sick man, the dying dead man, all of these things that he saw. So this is the problem of existence. The second noble truth is the cause of dukkha is craving. Now, there's a natural tendency for us to blame things outside of ourselves for our conditions in life. However, the Buddha says that the actual root is to be found in the mind itself, and in particular our tendency to grasp at things or alternatively push them away, either one, because it places us fundamentally at odds with the way life really is. In fact, he said, all human unhappiness comes from not facing reality squarely, exactly as it is. Now, he's talking about the reality in this dimension of what is happening in our life. So think about it. How many times have we wanted someone to act differently, whether it's our kids or our spouse or our boss or whatever? We wanted them to change, or we wish our condition in life was different, or I should have been born to rich parents, or whatever it is. The point is, we have to face life squarely as it is and go from there. Then the cessation of dukkha comes with the cessation of craving, of wanting things to be different, or wanting things, craving outside of ourselves, not understanding that we have everything inside of ourselves, and then it will just manifest in the physical. So as we're the ultimate cause of our difficulties, we're also the solution. We cannot change things that happen to us, Gautama says, but we can change our responses. Now, the historical Gautama taught much about the importance and power of our minds, so I want to talk about that. He said the mind is everything. What you think, you become. The thought manifests as the word manifests as the deed, and the deed develops into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. He said, all that we are is the result of what we've thought. It is founded on our thoughts and made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, suffering follows him as the wheel follows the hoof of the beast that draws the wagon. I love that analogy. If a man speaks or acts with good thought, happiness follows him like a shadow that never leaves him. Now, think about this. He's talking about thoughts, not deeds. He's talking about thoughts. And, we tend to think sometimes as, our negative karma, like, oh, what did I do to deserve this? Maybe it wasn't something you did. Maybe it's something we thought, incorrect thinking. leads to those actions that can create negative karma, or positive karma when the thoughts are positive, as Gautama is saying. And we can also think of Jesus' words. He said, when you have hatred in your heart for your brother, you've already killed. So we have to take this into consideration, that what we think is so important. Buddha says, awake, be witness to your thoughts. Now, that's not all that easy. As you go through the day, literally be aware of your thoughts. And when you have thoughts that are not at the level of the Christ, at the highest level, change them. But we have so many habits as we just float through the day and get through the day and react to things. So Gautama says, you are what observes, not what you observe. So you are the observer. So if someone insults you or calls you vile names, do you identify with that? Look at what's happening in the world today. Everyone is offended by every little thing. So do we have the immediate reaction of forgetting who we are and responding with our own negative thoughts and behavior? And that includes being hurt, offended, all of these emotions, all of these reactions. Now that doesn't mean we don't stand up for the truth, or we don't stand up for ourselves. It just means, as the Buddha says, do not learn how to react, learn how to respond. Even as a solid rock is unshaken by the wind, so are the wise unshaken by praise or blame. We are the observer. He also said, pain is certain, but suffering is optional. Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own unguarded thoughts. And it is during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. Focus to see the light. He says, when we meet real tragedy in life, we can react in two ways. Either by losing hope and falling into self-destructive habits, or by using the challenge to find our inner strength. And that inner strength is that light that we have to focus on, that Christ self, that I am presence. We have to focus on that in those really times of tough trials. And he goes further in discussing our thoughts and how we use our minds. He said, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. He's just saying what we now call in this modern day the law of attraction. Think about it. When you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. And what you imagine, you create. So we know if you want to create a different life, if you want to create something, that's what you need to imagine. That's what you need to step into. But if you're not in congruence, for example, we may say we want something, but deep down our feelings, we may not think we're worthy to receive that, or we may not really believe it could happen. So there's not congruence. Remember, feeling, those are feelings. Feeling attracts that to us. So even though our mind wants something and we're saying fiats and such, we have to make sure that we're in congruence and that our feelings are attracting that to us, and there's no block. But there's hope. Gautama also said, since everything is a reflection of our minds, everything can be changed by our minds. So we hold the power. Then he teaches us the secret of existence. Would you like to know this secret? He says, the whole secret of existence is to have no fear. Have no fear. So think about this. Fear, and doubt, which is just an aspect of fear, is what holds us back from so many things. It holds us back from really being who we are. Fear of being, making a mistake, fear of failing, fear of being successful, fear of what someone else might say about us, fear of stepping out of that comfort zone and going for what we really know deep inside is what we should be doing or who we should be. So have no fear. The whole secret to existence. Amazing. At one point, Buddha was asked, what have you gained from meditation? Nothing. However, let me tell you what I have lost. Anger, anxiety, depression, insecurity, and fear of old age and death. He said, you'll not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Buddha also taught alchemy and transmutation. And this is very powerful. He said, rage is a powerful energy that with diligent practice can be transformed into fierce compassion. Rage into fierce compassion. And of course, we know the power of transmutation. We know the violet flame. And we know how there can be the turning of the heart and the intention and turning to love. He says, and this is really good, he says, people with opinions just go around bothering one another. He said, if you truly loved yourself, you could never hurt another. You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. And then he talks about some practical things. He says, if the problem can be solved, why worry? If the problem cannot be solved, worrying will do no good. This again is accepting things the way they are and not worrying about things that have never happened and probably never will. Now, this takes discipline. We have to not worry. And I've always said, and not always mastered it, but I've always said, if worrying would help, I'm happy to worry. But in most cases, it simply does not help. He says, your work is to discover your world and then with all your heart, give yourself to it. If you want to fly, give up everything that weighs you down. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. And the Ascended Masters teach this also. Yes, they can. Jesus showed us the way. Jesus gave his life for our victory. The Masters can help us. The Masters can give us dispensations, the angels. But we have to walk that path. We have to make the decisions. We move into the ascension flame by ourselves. He says, there's no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. So be that which you want to be. Just be it. You want to be happy? Be happy. You can be happy by a mere choice. And he said, when you're facing in the right direction, all you need to do is keep on walking. Gautama, as an ascended master, an ascended being, gave a dictation, and it's entitled Time Is Not. And it's very, very powerful dictation that you may want to look up at some point. But as the historical Buddha walking the earth, he said, life can only take place in the present moment. If we lose the present moment, we lose life, because there is nothing else. The past and the future are not here now. There's only the present moment. And there is no time. And even our quantum physicist, Einstein, who's considered to be one of the greatest scientific minds that's ever lived by many people, said time is an illusion, a persistent one, but it's nevertheless an illusion. Gautama says true love is born from understanding. Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself, and love thine enemies. And Gautama says, however much we disagree with our enemies, our task is to identify with them, because they too feel justified in their point of view. And so love is born of understanding. Once we have understanding, then we can have true love. So what is this understanding? And why would Gautama say we need to identify with our enemies? And Jesus says, love our enemies. Let's go back to the beginning. In Genesis it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. We know there's but one God, one source, and one energy from which all things come. There is no other power. That's the illusion. So at the ultimate level, we're all one. Not just as light bearers, but even those fallen ones. Those who have chosen not to honor their source of God identity, who've rebelled against the very law of being. But we know they have a cycle also, and they always have that opportunity to turn around. But all of us are one, from the one source. Now, Saint Germain gave a dictation in 1967 through Mark Prophet, and he talks about illusion and oneness. So I want to read a couple of excerpts from there. This is entitled, Absorption into the Heart of God. Out of the one did he make many, out of the many did he make one. He says, the world today, steeped in the degradation of cumulative delusion, does not understand reality. Blessed ones, is in the heart of your presence. All reality is in the heart of your presence, fashioning for you, one and all, in the great infinite presence of life that expands through space and time. That image of joy, the abundant life, and God happiness. This is all captured within the flame of the immortal one, the flame that translates itself into a semblance of reality in human persons. So this flame in this immortal one is translating itself into the human persons. But it never manifests perfection until the ritual of the ascension has been completed by each live stream. Men feeding their own illusions are often bereft of the great happiness of God, intent for them individually, because illusion fosters illusion. And by, the veil becomes thick and so strong and such an enclosure, it separates man almost totally from the real aspects of his being, of his identity. The temporal identity becomes then each man's nemesis, yet he deems it his friend. Men make friends with their outer selves and consider their outer selves to be closely identified with reality. However, blessed ones, the ascended masters, one and all, know that the outer reality is totally illusion. Just as the inner self is the absolute, the infinite, the divine image. It is impossible for the outer man to ever externalize his divinity until he identifies and is made one with it. Simply put, the outer self cannot inherit the kingdom, for flesh and blood cannot. Now we understand also why Gautama talks about ridding yourself of the self, that there is a self separate from every other part of life. Man, Saint Germain continues, man is a spiritual being, and he must then discard these personal aspects of self-identity which cloud from view the reality of the divine self and prevent him per se from entering into an overcoming sense of cosmic grandeur. The nobility of the soul as it manifests its light complex, its wholeness, its complete freedom to express its latent divinity. Divinity is only latent in man because he lives so much in the outer sense consciousness and so little in the internal security of the eternal presence. This is no play on words, gracious ones, but it is the manifestation of immortal keys to your freedom. And then another place he says, body corporeal must be understood, even as corporeal sense is grasped, in order to convey the physical frame and the form of the universe. And the mind-penetrating substance must be known as the directing intelligence, or universal sense consciousness, which comes from God and is the manifestation of your own I am presence in form. So we come from God, and that is our I am presence in form. This permeating Christ intelligence, directing all manifestations of outer nature, is also able, if given preeminence, to direct the intelligence of your body, your mind, and being, until that triad of manifestation is a unity of oneness, until we become one within our own being. Let all understand then that the spirit or the soul of God is also identified with man as the gift of the Creator. In its highest order, this gift of himself is identification with all creation, with all oneness, with every ascended master, with every angel deva, with every builder of form. And so the many become the one, as the sense of each one becomes the sense of all. We then seek to create in you the means of dispelling illusion, so that the divine flame pulsating within you will burn the veils of discordant energy, of negative thoughts. And these veils, the energy veil, it's evil, because after so much clouding over and not even knowing who you are, who your source is, then that is when those go after the light bearers for their light, because they have no more streaming to them. So thus you will see this divine reality blazing through you, which is the passport for mankind to know their own freedom. Freedom is the freedom to enter into the real and into the heart of the real. Freedom is not licensed to maintain or manifest the whimsy of the human will. It is the great identification with the One and the presence of love, light, and life everywhere manifest. And the last excerpt where he says, let men understand the meaning of all of this. For the purposes of life were to convey life, and life could not be conveyed without realization and awareness. And therefore, consciousness came from God and was sent unto man as the highest gift in order that man might become one with God. Without consciousness of identity, without consciousness of self, there would have been no mirror into which the eternal could have projected his light. So he's saying God as the One externalized himself, individualized himself in our own mighty I am presence, and then he could know himself. He has that reflection. And thus self-identity was that mirror. It is borne down through the ages, the reflection of many illicit images other than the one intended to be conveyed. But that matters not. When the inlet finds its entree into the sea of being and identifies with the allness of God, the splendor of true reality is mirrored. And in that outpicturing, the Son becomes one with the Father, and there is no loss to either, for God desires it to be so. and the Son desires it also. Thus out of the one did he make many, and out of the many will he one day make one. So with this teaching, we can understand better the art of Ho'oponopono, which is that ancient Hawaiian art for resolving differences among people, and how in this modern age, Dr. Liu, who is a psychiatrist who worked in a asylum for the criminally insane, these were wild people, and how did he work with them and counsel them and heal them? He took their files, he opened their files, and he practiced Ho'oponopono. This 4 simple steps by saying, I am sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. You say, why are you saying you're sorry and forgive me to these people? Because of the awareness that we are one, and that person, that situation that came to his consciousness needed to be healed. So we have to heal ourselves. We have to heal that part of ourself that is manifesting that way. And so that is why we go through forgiveness, being sorry, and giving love for transmutation. This practice really just acknowledges our oneness while still maintaining our individual identities. So what does this mean to us as light bearers? We who know much about the law, we understand and are aware of fallen ones and the fallen angels and the great war in heaven and all the Armageddon, all that we're going through. So what does this mean? To me it means that when we give our judgment calls, as we know, and the masters have told us, the judgment comes through us first. The judgment is freeing life and freeing energy. It's freeing that part of ourselves, that part of God that needs to be free. Now, every part, every individualization of God has free will. So we can't control what someone else might do, but we can control what we do. We can control that we stand in love at the level of the Christ self whenever we're interacting, whenever we're calling for judgment, whenever, whatever, just going through life. So that's what we can control. And all of us will go back into the heart of God, become the one again. And as we know, we will step into on that dais of the eternal flame, and we will either be made permanent as gold is in fire, or consumed as paper is. And that's all up to us. As Saint Germain said, to be or not to be is really the question. You know, we interviewed someone in our community when we were doing our radio show that talked about how she practiced sending love to someone she did not like. She practiced it every single day. Now, what happened? She was transformed by it. It was an amazing experience. So it's something that we can bring into our meditative practices. Gautama says, quiet the mind and the soul will speak. He says, everything that has a beginning has an ending. Make your peace with that, and all will be well. And then his great words of wisdom, in the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? I challenge each of us to ask these questions. Ask these questions every single day of yourself, so that every day you can evaluate, how well did I love? How fully did I live? How deeply did I let go? And then every day we are letting go of amount of substance. I think you'll find sometimes that memories that you haven't even thought of come up, and they may not even be traumatic. They just may be something that made it registered in your consciousness for some reason. Put it into the flame. The end of every day, write it down, put it somewhere, and ask yourself so that every day it's just another step toward into the reality and the beingness of our I am presence in Christ self. How well did I love? How fully did I live? How deeply did I let go? We don't want to wait till the end of our life. Now we have the great pleasure to hear a dictation given by beloved Gautama and Mother Mary. It's from the New Beginnings Conference, and it was from 1998. It was published in Pearls of Wisdom, Volume 41, Number 10, entitled Mother Mary Nurtures the Children of the World. So let us stand in their presence, be in their presence, internalize the word.